Baltimore City State's attorney charges a teen and two parents in a triple shooting near a school. Next at 4, the message Ivan Bates has for the people of Baltimore. Then our team is monitoring the juvenile crime hearing in Annapolis as lawmakers work to address the statewide crisis.
Live from WBFF in Baltimore, this is Fox 45 News at 4.
If you're a parent or a guardian and you're participating or complicit in violence being perpetrated in Baltimore, then you just need to bring the family pack of the toothbrushes. Because my administration will hold the entire family accountable.
City State's Attorney Ivan Bates issues a warning to parents in Baltimore. He announced charges for 2 parents accused of taking part in a fight between kids that ended with 3 teens being shot.
The crackdown on parents comes as state lawmakers hold a 3rd hearing going on right now on how to address the state's juvenile crime crisis. Thank you for joining us. I'm Mary Bubala.
And I'm Kai Jackson. We have team coverage on the youth crime crisis. Mackenzie Frost is in Annapolis tracking what lawmakers are saying about possible solutions.
But first, let's go to Alexa Ashwell and the charges those 2 Baltimore parents are facing tonight. Alexa?
Yes, Kai, Mary, collectively, this family, the father, mother, and their 15-year-old son, they are all facing a combined at least 3 dozen criminal counts from this assault-turned-shooting at Carver Vocational School back in October. The 15-year-old, we're told, is being charged as an adult with charges including attempted murder. Baltimore City State's Attorney Ivan Bates announced the indictments this morning. Parents William Dredden and Tiffany Harrison are each facing more than a dozen charges. Bates says the father and mother not only conspired with their teen son, but helped him assault another teen outside Carver Vocational School back on October 27th. The assault led to a shooting where Bates says the son and another teen began firing at one another. Both were shot, as well as a 3rd teen. The parents, we're told, then rushed their child to shock trauma. Bates says the entire incident was caught on video, calling the behavior unacceptable and criminal.
We need parents to be parents. I'm going to say it again. Now, more than ever, in Baltimore, we need parents to be parents. These 2 parents fell woefully short of their responsibility that day.
So, Kai, Mary, the teen is not being identified because he is a juvenile, but again, he is facing the attempted murder charge, which means he will be charged as an adult.
And Alexa, what can you tell us about these parents, and is anyone else facing any other charges in the case?
Yes, we looked at the father's criminal history. He has a lengthy criminal history. As for anyone else facing any other charges, Bates says a total of 5 people are being held accountable, including some of those other teens. I'll have more on that coming up at 5. Alexa Ashwell, Fox 45 News.
Alexa, thank you. Coming up on Fox 45 News at 5 o'clock, Ivan Bates will join us in studio to talk about those charges and what he hopes to see from the state legislature when it comes to addressing juvenile crime.
Bates is one of more than a dozen top prosecutors in Maryland who's calling for change in Annapolis, saying juvenile justice laws make it impossible to hold young people accountable. Those prosecutors represent 5.4 million people, about 87% of the state's population.
They criticize the Juvenile Justice Reform Act, which prevents children under 13 from facing most criminal charges, and the Child Interrogation Protection Act, which states police can't question any child as a suspect or witness without notifying parents and getting approval from an attorney. One of those state's attorneys tells Fox 45 News inaction in Annapolis is not an option.
Fox 45 News has seen countless brazen crimes committed by juveniles all across Maryland. And tonight we're taking a closer look at the timeline of violence as state government waits to act. On September 13th, Maryland lawmakers hold their first hearing surrounding the juvenile crime crisis.
and you're either going to be successful or unsuccessful, that takes away from the consequences of them realizing that they're not going to be done with us until they either age out or until they successfully complete the programs.
Now, another big debate during this hearing is the Child in Need of Supervision petition, or a SINS petition, as we often hear it referred to. That's something that law enforcement officers can file if this juvenile in question is too young to face charges. But right now, the criticism is that the SINS petitions are voluntary, and we're learning that it's actually being used at a varying degree of effectiveness in police departments across the state.
Can you share with us, in your opinion, why we're not using the SINS process?
Well, that's actually a very difficult question. It starts off where the police are involved, then it moves to juvenile services. Then at that point, it could even become a petition if there was a child was charged with a crime, and if it's going to be a SINS child, that petition would be filed. And then what ends up happening after that is then finally can be a petition filed with the courts. Now, I've done thousands of juvenile cases, and I have never had a SINS appear in front of me formally in St. Mary's County.
Interesting to hear from that judge. Of course, St. Mary's County, very rural, and a much smaller county, obviously, than Prince George's, Montgomery, or Baltimore County. So you probably have to factor that in there, Mackenzie. But regardless, this is the third hearing this panel has held and talked about juvenile crime. Any conversation about making changes to the current laws?
Yeah, Guy, a great point there about the hearing from different people in the various counties all across the state, each one bringing a different perspective here. But in terms of legislation right now, no, at least not from Democrats. The chair of this committee, Delegate Luke Clippinger, a Democrat from Baltimore City, started off the hearing by saying that he anticipates different pieces of legislation that will be introduced and debated when lawmakers kick off the session in January. We know earlier that we saw the Republicans unveil their plans to address juvenile crime, and we're expecting and waiting to see a plan from the governor, who has said he too will unveil a plan before the General Assembly session begins, which, as a reminder to our viewers, is January 10th. Right now, this hearing is still underway. I'm hoping that we'll have the opportunity to ask some of the committee members some questions about where they stand and their views on potential legislation to perhaps making some more changes once this committee hearing wraps up. Hopefully we'll have more on that coming up at 5 and 6. We're live in Annapolis. Mackenzie Frost, Fox 45 News.
Mackenzie, thank you. Speaker Adrian Jones and Senate President Bill Ferguson are two of the most powerful lawmakers in Annapolis. If you feel you're not being heard, you can contact them. We've got their phone numbers and email addresses listed right there on your screen. After a resolution condemning Hamas's terrorist attacks against Israel fails at City Hall, the 4 council members who abstained from last night's vote are now defending that decision.
Fox 45's Amy Simpson is live at City Hall. Amy?
Yes, Mary Kai, 4 members of City Council standing by their decision to sit out of that vote last night on the resolution to condemn the Hamas terrorist attacks on Israel, saying in part this measure was rushed through without discussion. Now, this resolution was introduced last night by City Councilman Isaac Yitzi Schleifer, intended to condemn the Hamas terrorist attacks on Israel in October and stand in solidarity with the local and worldwide Jewish population. But it failed to receive the required 12 votes for approval. It instead only got 9 yes votes, and 2 members of council, Robert Stokes and James Torrance, were not present last night. The 4 other council members, Christopher Burnett, Ryan Dorsey, Felicia Porter, and Odette Ramos, all abstained from voting altogether. And here's Councilman Schleifer after that measure failed last night.
With the large Jewish population that we have here in Baltimore, that is feeling very isolated and alone because of the recent events and the rise in anti-Semitism in the United States, it's important that their government can stand with them.
But Mary Kai, those 4 council members who abstained on this vote released a lengthy joint statement this afternoon saying, quote, first and foremost, we unequivocally condemn the actions of Hamas, a designated terrorist organization. That statement read in part, quote, we stand in solidarity with Palestinians and Israelis who yearn for a peaceful and prosperous future. But the council members also described the resolution as, quote, last minute and claims the measure went against council rules and procedure, concerned it doesn't condemn Islamophobia and all forms of hate, not just anti-Semitism, finishing by saying, quote, we stand by our decision to abstain in voting for an incomplete resolution that is not inclusive of all the communities and nuances of this global conflict. That statement coming just about 2 hours ago, around 2 o'clock this afternoon. You can read their full statement. It's up on our website, foxbaltimore.com. We're live at City Hall. Amy Simpson, Fox 45 News.
Amy, thank you. That brings us to our question of the day. Did the council members who abstained do the right thing? The poll open. To make your voice heard, head to foxbaltimore.com/vote.
And coming up after the break, we are talking one-on-one with City Councilman Yitzi Schleifer about his resolution, its failure to pass, and the latest on the war in Israel.
Unbelievable video of Alexandria, Virginia, what we're learning from that major blast. And where did hundreds of millions of dollars in pandemic support funds go? We take a closer look at what some are now calling COVID slush funds.
And I'm Wyatt Everhart. A day in the upper 40s to near 50 degrees. Now temperatures cooling off as wintry weather begins to edge into western Maryland. We'll talk about the impact the system might have to the overnight hours around the Baltimore area. That's coming up after the break.
Fighting rages on in the Middle East as the Israeli army pushes its air and ground offensive into southern Gaza. Israeli forces stormed southern Gaza's main city earlier today. IDF officials calling the attack the most intense day of combat in its 5 weeks of ground operations against Hamas. Israel believes Hamas commanders are hiding in parts of a vast tunnel network in the territory.
The sirens are being heard over Tel Aviv. CNN says its team has heard at least 8 rocket interceptions of the Iron Dome defense system. Right now, no other information has been released. The military wing of Hamas claimed responsibility for a rocket attack on Tel Aviv yesterday.
Meanwhile, here in Baltimore, a key decision yesterday coming from the city council as members failed to pass a resolution in support of Israel.
The measure condemns the Hamas-led attack on Israel in October. That's a statement that just came out, and anti-Semitism. But it failed to get the 12 required votes needed, with 9 members voting yes, 4 abstaining, 2 others weren't present.
City Councilman Yitzi Schleifer, who introduced the resolution, joining us today in studio to talk to us about what happened last night. Councilman, thanks so much for being here.
Thanks for having me.
So the 4 council members who abstained from the vote released a statement this afternoon saying they do support both Israelis and Palestinians, but say they didn't have time to review the resolution, and they took issue with the statement, didn't mention heightened Islamophobia along with the rise in anti-Semitism. What is your response to all that?
Well, 2 things. Number one, it absolutely did mention Muslims who are being impacted by hate crimes as well. That's in the resolution. And number 2, their statement said that there needs to be a more meaningful conversation about this topic. I don't really feel that there needs to be a meaningful conversation to condemn terrorism and anti-Semitism. That should be something that any of us can condemn instantly.
Councilman Schleifer, you pointed out the large Jewish community that the Baltimore area has. Are you concerned that the fact that this resolution didn't pass sends a particular message? And if so, what do you believe that message is?
Absolutely. I mean, rejecting this sends a message to anti-Semites in Baltimore that their city government is okay with them targeting Jews. I mean, this is not acceptable when it is targeting any other demographic, but these 4 council members felt that it was okay when Jews were the ones being targeted.
So what will your next steps be? Do you plan to reintroduce the resolution?
I mean, I have to see what the next steps are, but I'm going to continue to do what my grandparents didn't have the opportunity to do when they were in the concentration camps during the Holocaust. And I'm going to continue to use my voice and my platform to stand up against hate and stand up against anti-Semitism.
Councilman Yitzi Schleifer, thank you for joining us. We appreciate it.
All right, weather-wise today, certainly a bit of a more chill in the air and a cloudier scenario today. A little bright early on, but the clouds never really breaking completely for the sun today. 48 degrees right now at BWI under a mostly cloudy sky. Winds are variable at 7 miles per hour. As we look off to the west, this is our next main weather maker. Clipper system already providing precipitation to places like Ohio, out toward Columbus, and even back into southwestern Pennsylvania toward Pittsburgh. And this precipitation, is not of a significant, robust nature. So as it comes across the high terrain to the west, the mountains, out toward Deep Creek Lake and beyond into West Virginia, this shower activity is likely to steadily diminish. So yes, mixed showers, and yes, by overnight tonight, as this moisture comes into the I-95 corridor, it'll be cold enough for some of this to fly as snowflakes, but there's not going to be a lot of moisture. Right now, closest snow is going to be out in Martinsburg, West Virginia, out toward Paw Paw, and also into the basically Maryland, West Virginia border area. Temperatures now here in the Baltimore region hovering about 12 to 14 degrees above freezing, so mid-40s now. And those temperatures certainly keeping the ground well above freezing as well. So even if we get a few mixed showers overnight, it probably won't stick all that well. Rest of the evening, I think, still dry with clouds. Down through the 30s will go. Chances for mixed showers coming in through those late overnight hours into the early wee hours of the morning on Wednesday. So I think primarily travelers to the west overnight and in the early morning hours. That'd be the main place you could find some precipitation. Otherwise, this system is going to continue to clear out. Sets the stage for a drier scenario, a brighter scenario into the midweek and Wednesday. I will say this, though, behind this system, this clipper is going to pull in some colder air out of basically the plains, the northern plains. And so this colder air will be diving south, replacing the somewhat mild air we've had in place over the last several days. So only into the mid-40s Wednesday, upper 40s Thursday, very cold nights below freezing. However, we do get a mild surge back in place as we head into this weekend. So the second weekend of December actually looks to trend above average, temperature-wise, statistically speaking at least. So there we go from the 40s into the 50s this weekend. A milder scenario. Looks like a really nice Saturday. Rain likely for the Ravens on Sunday at this point. That could be a wet game out there.
Wyatt, thanks. A police standoff ends with a massive explosion. What we're learning tonight about the situation leading up to this site.
A new update to rules critics say were already too lax. I'm Christine Frizzell with a look at the changes when it comes to COVID aid money.
It has been just about 7 months since the COVID-19 pandemic was declared officially over, and yet state and local governments which received aid money to help with the recovery efforts will now get even more time to use it. National correspondent Christine Frizzell reports.
During those long months of quarantine from COVID-19, it wasn't just businesses that lost millions of dollars. The lack of tax revenue meant state and local governments did too. Part of the coronavirus relief fund was meant to fix that. State and local fiscal recovery funds would end up totaling $350 billion.
We feel as if this addresses the needs for states that have lost a lot.
But years later, more than half of it remains unspent. The U.S. Treasury Department now saying what the money can be used for has a little more wiggle room. The Department of Treasury's updated rule amends the definition of obligation to provide additional flexibility to recipients of COVID relief funds. They'll no longer have to pay back unobligated money as long as estimates of the amounts they plan to use are given. Critics call it a, quote, Bidenomics slush fund. The conservative Economic Policy Innovation Center detailing how millions of dollars were approved for projects to update swimming pools, golf courses, and sports stadiums at a time when our national debt has reached well over $33 trillion.
While the American people struggled during the pandemic, our tax dollars are being used for all kinds of frivolous purposes, and I think it's upsetting.
As of March of this year, the Government Accountability Office reported states and localities had not even spent 50% of their awards.
COVID aid was meant to help people or institutions or entities that had real needs. To the extent that you don't have a financial need, you should pay the money back.
Lawmakers have in fact agreed to claw back about $30 million in coronavirus relief money, with Republicans still pushing to get much more returned. In Washington, I'm Christine Frizzell.
2 Howard County students attacked while waiting for public transportation. Project Baltimore hears from a victim and examines why the school system isn't providing a safer way to get to class. A home explodes during a police standoff in Virginia last night. What we're learning from the scene tonight. An attempt to strip the Baltimore County Inspector General of her powers. The battle over the government watchdog as we press the county executive on where he stands.
The Baltimore City Council president is pushing a bill that would strip the county inspector general's office powers. Now, if passed, the policies would limit the Watchdog's funding, operation, and also ability to publicly publish records. Fox 45 is pressing the county executive for answers on the push to limit the inspector general.
Rebecca Pryor is live with details on the plan and what comes next. Rebecca.
And Mary, not only would these proposed changes strip the inspector general of their powers, but the proposed changes that were introduced by Council Chair Julian Jones, they were trying to push through at the very last minute. Instead, the rest of council refused. They decided to delay this vote for 2 weeks, allowing for the public to weigh in on the changes. Those amendments, they include the creation of an advisory board. It would be made of 7 members. Most of them would be county officials. It would also require the inspector general to submit reports to that board for approval before they can be released to the public. The amendments would also cut back on the IG subpoena powers, making it so that the inspector general would have to ask for the documents they need first, then wait 90 days for a response before they can issue a subpoena themselves. Inspector General Kelly Madigan calling the proposed changes outrageous, arguing that they would compromise the integrity of her office. The changes also go against the recommendations of the Blue Ribbon Commission, who spent 10 months and $100,000 taxpayer dollars forming appropriate guidelines for the Inspector General's office. Today on Fox 45's morning show, County Executive Johnny Olszewski siding with Madigan, saying that he was also blindsided during last night's meeting.
I completely understand the Inspector General's shock and surprise and outrage in this situation. Neither she nor this administration were made aware of these amendments. They were last second. We stand by our belief that the legislation that we put forward originally, that we thought was going to be adopted last night, is the right path forward for this office and for Baltimore County.
Now, I reached out to Council Chair Jones's office today asking for a comment, but as of news time tonight, have not heard back. Reporting live in Baltimore City, Rebecca Pryor, Fox 45 News.
Thank you, Rebecca. Making headlines right now, Anne Arundel County Police are looking for suspects in an armed gas station robbery. Take a look at these 2 people caught on camera. Police say they entered the Royal Farms on Campmead Road, that's in Linthicum. The suspects reportedly stole cigarettes from the store and told the clerk not to stop them because they were armed, and then ran out. Anyone with information should contact Anne Arundel County Police.
A Baltimore man under arrest after being accused of trying to kill a 70-year-old woman. 29-year-old William Bowles is charged with attempted murder. Last week, police responded to a scene on Otterbein Street in South Baltimore. They say Bowles had stabbed the woman. She was rushed to the hospital. Police say she is stable but did not share her condition.
Even when you see it, you still can't believe it. A massive explosion happens in an Arlington, Virginia neighborhood last night. A building just incinerated, goes up in flames after a standoff between police and someone inside that home. In the aftermath, you can see debris scattered across the neighborhood and the fire burning where the home once stood.
Local officials have been working to determine what caused the blast. Tom Rousey from our Sinclair sister station in D.C. is in Arlington now with the latest on the investigation.
We learned a lot of new details at a press conference this afternoon about the house explosion in Arlington, Virginia, just a few miles outside of Washington, D.C. Let me step out of the way and you can see what little is left of the home behind me. It was actually a duplex, but the fire department says they evacuated the folks who were on the other side before the explosion. This is the video that has gone around the world at this point of the house exploding in Arlington. Arlington County Police say earlier in the day they were called to the home because someone was firing flares in the air, and the homeowner, James Chu, he was identified as, apparently wasn't very communicative, so they got a warrant to come back and go in the home, and they tried to execute that last night. Well, when they did, that's when the explosion happened. Some shots were fired inside the home as police were trying to execute the warrant. They say they're not 100% sure if they were aimed at the officers or not. I talked to one witness who says when officers tried to break their way into the home for a second time, that's when the house blew up. Now, interestingly, the fire department actually says they turned the gas off before the explosion, so presumably this was not a gas explosion. They also say they evacuated a lot of residents and probably saved lives before the explosion.
where an individual had barricaded themselves, we took the necessary steps to remove neighbors in case something such as this, as unfortunate as this, could occur.
Last night we received a request from the Arlington County Fire Marshals to respond to a scene of an explosion. Dispatched special agents and our certified explosive experts and bomb techs.
When the incident occurred last night, the FBI sent special agent bomb technicians along with our other federal partners.
The last two gentlemen you heard from there were from the ATF and the FBI, both of them saying they sent bomb technicians to the scene after the explosion last night. Authorities not confirming if they think this was a bomb or not, but a lot of explosives experts have been called to the scene. And again, the gas was turned off before the explosion, according to the Arlington County Fire Department. Reporting in Arlington, Virginia, I'm Tom Rousey for Fox 45 News.
A Howard County student has returned to class nearly a week after she says a man attacked her as she made her way to school.
Project Baltimore first reported that incident last week. Chris Papps has been investigating and found this could be part of a bigger problem impacting students walking to school because the school system cut their bus service.
Jada Jones is struggling.
I want my life to go back to what it was before, with school.
This 15-year-old is in 10th grade at Wild Lake High School in Howard County. 6 days ago, she and her friend were on their way to school. It was about 7:30, a cold November morning. And instead of walking, the girls decided to take public transit. They were waiting at this bus stop off Columbia Road when a man attacked them.
So he was grabbing on her purse, and I started punching him and trying to get him off of her. And then he started pulling my hair and punching me like in my chest. And we both were defending ourselves, like hitting on him, trying to get him off of us because he was fighting back. And I guess we let him loose, like we got off of him and we started running.
Terrified, the girls ran all the way to school. Jada called her grandmother, Michelle Williams.
I'm raising them, and I'm all they got. And she's all I got, as my daughter, And just for her and her friend, it took everything in me to try to keep my mind focused and just tell Jada it's going to be okay.
Jada and her grandmother live 2 miles from Wild Lake High School. They don't own a car, and Jada used to ride the school bus. But this year, that's not an option.
It is not fair. I want our buses back.
About 3,500 students lost their school buses. After Howard County increased the distance students must live from school in order to qualify for a school bus. Those 3,500 students are now considered walkers, including Jada.
Some of us don't have the transportation to pick their kids and take them to school. Then you made it difficult because now our children is getting hurt in the midst of this.
Jada's grandmother is worried, and she's not alone.
First and foremost concern is safety. Safety, period, end of story.
Project Baltimore has spoken with a number of parents outraged by the district's decision to cut school bus service. Over the summer, they held protests, hoping to convince the school district to reverse course because of safety concerns.
Save our school buses!
Those concerns have become reality. What happened to Jada is just the latest incident. Less than 3 weeks ago, before Jada and her friend were attacked, 2 other Howard County High School students were robbed in separate incidents while walking home from school. Project Baltimore looked into those incidents. In both cases, police say the victims were walking home from Centennial High School when they were robbed at gunpoint by 2 assailants. The robberies occurred just a few minutes apart near Gwen Park Drive and Riverside Circle in Ellicott City. Project Baltimore looked up that neighborhood on the Howard County bus transportation map. The green boundary line represents walkers. Last year in 2022, students who lived in this section received bus service. But look at the current map. The entire neighborhood is now considered walkers.
Project Baltimore did speak with one of the students from Centennial High School. He told us he was walking home that day because just like Jada, he lost his school bus. So that means 4 Howard County students in less than a month have reported being victims of crimes, and 3 of them have confirmed to FOX45 they had their school bus taken away.
Howard County Schools maintains that cuts to bus service increase efficiency because school start times change this year. The district declined an interview with Fox 45, saying in a statement, "We are deeply concerned for the welfare and well-being of each of our students." The school system went on to thank Howard County Police for keeping neighborhoods safe and said that it's appreciative of the RTA, Regional Transportation Agency, which offers free bus passes to Howard County students.
I need you to tell me that you have transportation for my baby tomorrow so she can go to school and feel safe, so she can have a proper education.
Project Baltimore wants to hear from you. Are you a parent or a student in Howard County who recently lost their bus and is concerned about safety? Call our hotline, send me an email, go to foxbaltimore.com to follow our progress on this story. I'm Chris Pabst, and this is Project Baltimore.
Well, we're down to just 5 eligible Republicans for tomorrow's debate, and one of them isn't coming. What to expect from another primary clash?
All right, on the weather front today, cloudy skies. Now we're watching snow edging its way into western Maryland. Our next weather maker making its presence felt here in the Mid-Atlantic. We'll talk about the impact it could have to the I-95 corridor later tonight. It's coming up.
Well, the debate stage is set for the 4th GOP primary debate. It will be the smallest yet, with only 5 candidates qualifying. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, former UN Ambassador Nikki Haley, who is also the former governor of South Carolina, businessman Vivek Ramaswamy, and former New Jersey Governor Chris Christie will take the stage tomorrow. Former President Donald Trump, the current frontrunner, will skip the event. The fourth GOP primary debate is happening tomorrow night at 7 in Tuscaloosa, Alabama. A new twist in the federal corruption case against New Jersey Senator Bob Menendez. A new report appears to strengthen the prosecution's case that he accepted bribes for his political influence. National correspondent Dr. El Nashar has the story.
More than 2 months after being indicted on federal corruption charges, there's renewed pressure on Democratic Senator Bob Menendez to step down.
What you see here are 3 kilograms of gold.
The public's learning more about how prosecutors may back up their allegation Menendez took bribes from New Jersey businessman Fred Davies to influence the New Jersey U.S. Attorney's Office in 2018, when it investigated Davies for bank fraud.
We have exclusive new information about those gold bars.
WNBC in New York City linking gold bars found in Menendez's home to Davies. How? The serial numbers on them match those of gold bars that were stolen from Davies during a 2013 robbery at his penthouse and were later returned to him. A lawyer for Menendez called it anonymous media leaks designed to prejudice his right to a fair trial. On Capitol Hill, half of Menendez's fellow Democratic senators have called on him to step down.
I will continue to cast votes on behalf of the people of New Jersey.
Menendez said that in late September, and there's no sign he's changing his mind. His office did not respond to our request for comment. His colleague, Democratic Senator John Fetterman, found a new way to get his attention.
Hey, Bobby, look, I don't think I need to tell you, but these people that want to make you get in trouble, you make them put up or shut up.
With this cameo by George Santos, Fetterman draws a parallel between Menendez and the now expelled congressman.
If you expel somebody like, George Santos, how can you allow somebody like, Senator Menendez remain in the Senate as well, too?
Congresswoman Susan Wild, the top Democrat on the House Ethics Committee that released the report preceding Santos's expulsion, says if a Senate ethics investigation into Menendez is happening, it would be confidential.
But I hope that they, follow the same kind of rigorous process that we followed here.
A process that may or may not have the same outcome for Menendez as it did for Santos. On Capitol Hill, I'm Atra El-Nashar reporting.
Well, not a bad Tuesday out there, but not the brightest day either. Sun never really was able to break through. I mean, we had just enough cloud cover to kind of keep the sun at bay. Still edging up close to 50 in many spots today. 48 still now at BWI. Wind is light, visibility unrestricted. So overall, quiet on the range, so to speak, in central Maryland for the moment. But we are watching, again, that weather maker that has been pushing in out of the west over the last 36 hours, now arriving into the mid-Atlantic area. But when you look more carefully here at HD radar, you can see that a lot of this moisture is already being kind of diminished or wrung out, as we say, in the high terrain here to the west. So what happens is as the system comes into the higher terrain to the west, it gets lifted. All right, so the system is lifted up over the higher elevations. You get orographic precipitation. Bottom line, we just lose a lot of the moisture that was in that system and didn't have a ton to begin with. Still, there are some wintry showers and flakes flying just west of Hagerstown out toward Cumberland, and that 68 drive west all the way out to Deep Creek. Certainly some snow in the state right now. Right around the central part of the state, we're still well above freezing, by the way. So even as we begin to get a few showers late tonight, ground temp's going to be way above freezing. And as we look at the overnight hours here, even in central Maryland, we're probably going to hover just above freezing. So, yeah, a few flakes could fly past midnight. Will they stick? No, but any drivers on the road, you know how it is. A few flakes fly and even just rain showers just kind of really makes traffic worse. So we'll watch that for the early morning commute tomorrow. Other than that, just colder and brisk behind that system for midweek. Then a milder trend kicks in for the weekend. So again, watching that system push through tonight, diminishing, weakening as it arrives, then clearer, sunnier conditions into our Wednesday afternoon, setting the stage for a couple of bright days, but chilly days, chilly and brisk. That's going to be the scenario behind this system because this low pressure area is just dragging in some colder air out of the northern plains. And we're going to get a taste of that here over the next certainly 72 hours. You can see only 40s for highs Wednesday, Thursday, and the nighttime lows certainly be below freezing the next couple of nights as well. But then we get that rebound in the temperatures as we go to the upper 50s Friday, upper 50s on Saturday, even a chance to go above 60 for Ravens game day Sunday. However, our next weather maker coming in at that same time, a rain system in its entirety, but it could be wet and windy out there at M&T Bank Stadium for that game on Sunday. You're going to want to track the forecast carefully if you're going.
We will take your advice, Wyatt. Thank you, sir. For many, the holidays are a time to give back, and today, Amazon helped one Baltimore nonprofit do that. The company donated $15,000 to Share Baby. It's a local organization that gives away diapers and other essentials to baby items to families in need. Amazon says donations like these are necessary during the holiday season.
And this time of year, we love to be able to provide this for the community. I know this is a really hard time for a lot of people, and Amazon is really committed to connecting the place where our associates work with the place where our associates live.
Our families generally struggle to get through the holidays. They don't always have access to the goods and services that they need over the holidays, and their donation today is absolutely invaluable to us.
Well, in addition to the donation, Amazon employees also brought boxes of diapers, wipes, and other baby items. Share Baby says the items Amazon brought will completely stock their warehouse, so some good news there. Coming up at 5 o'clock, LSU basketball star Angel Reese is back following a controversial 4-game suspension. We speak to an expert on how suspensions like this impact young athletes.
New study takes a look at cannabis use disorder and lung cancer risk. I'm Liz Bonus. Why pulmonologists are very concerned. We explain just ahead.
As more states move to legalize marijuana, a new study shows that may come with some health risk. Medical reporter Liz Bonus shares what's been linked to cannabis use disorder.
Hey there, everybody. This study published in Nature Genetics now adding to a growing body of evidence, pulmonologists say, linking cannabis use disorder to lung cancer risk.
It turns out it may have to do with what's in your genes. Researchers have identified stretches of DNA that could be linked to cannabis addiction and associated with health conditions such as lung cancer. What we don't know is if certain ways marijuana is delivered into the body, such as smoking weed, may influence this risk.
My general rule of thumb is anything inhaled except medications can certainly be harmful to your lungs.
Pulmonologist Dr. Andrew Vogel says we don't know all the early warning signs yet that pot may be influencing your lungs. He suggests you see a healthcare provider for evaluation if you notice
shortness of breath, coughing, including a chronic cough that's prolonged, wheezing, chest tightness. Those are some of the symptoms that can develop with any of use of these drugs.
The CDC reports marijuana is now used by nearly 1 in 5 people at least once a year. Of those users, roughly a third of people develop marijuana addiction or cannabis use disorder, which is defined as a problematic pattern of cannabis use, which leads to significant impairment or distress.
So given that we're seeing this association,
Advocate in any of my specific patients who I'm treating, especially with chronic lung disease, that unfortunately the data is starting to trend that way, and unfortunately damaging health consequences specifically to the lungs as well as the heart and overall health in general.
next step, he says, maybe to consider asking about cannabis use at regular checkups at your doctor's office to assess the need for early or yearly lung cancer screening. With your health news, I'm medical reporter Liz Bonus reporting.
Coming up on Fox 45 News at 5 o'clock, 2 parents and their teenage son are charged in a triple shooting outside a city school. We pressed City State's Attorney Ivan Bates on his decision to prosecute the adults involved. Lawmakers are back in Annapolis tackling the juvenile crime crisis. The latest details coming out of the State House. Leaders gather right now in Annapolis to address the surge in juvenile crime. What we can expect out of today's meeting as more residents fall victim to crime.
The Baltimore City Council failed to get enough votes for a resolution condemning Hamas. Fox 45 News questions members who abstained from the vote on the controversial decision.
Unbelievable video shows a moment a house explodes right outside of Washington, D.C. The latest developments in the investigation and firsthand accounts from neighbors.
Live from WBFF in Baltimore, this is Fox 45 News at 5.
If you're a parent or a guardian and you're participating or complicit in violence being perpetrated in Baltimore, then you just need to bring the family pack of the toothbrushes. Because my administration will hold the entire family accountable.
A stern warning from Baltimore City State's Attorney Ivan Bates as he announces charges in the triple shooting outside of Carver High School in October. Bates doubling down that his office will be holding parents accountable for crimes committed by their children. Thank you for staying with us. I'm Mary Bubala.
And I'm Kai Jackson. Now, that warning comes as we see a surge in juvenile crime across Maryland. Residents were speaking out, saying lawmakers are out of touch and something needs to change.
If we can't hold the parents responsible, then the system needs to hold the juveniles responsible.
It's crazy. These juveniles are out of control. Something's got to be done.
They're catering to the children. They're catering to the lawbreakers.
Today, lawmakers are gathering in Annapolis to address the surge in juvenile crime. It's the third hearing on this subject this year.
We have live team coverage tonight, starting with Mackenzie Frost. She is at that hearing in Annapolis, joins us live now with key takeaways so far. Mackenzie?
Yeah, Mary and Kai, this hearing actually just wrapped up not too long ago, and really there hasn't been a conversation in the committee about making specific changes to the legislation. Today was really more about hearing from various programs that are working with young people across the state. One specifically we heard from operates in Anne Arundel County through the police department, working with young kids who are given the option not to face charges if they participate. And while the program itself is optional, we heard today that the outcome is really up to the kid.
So we're trying to correct the behavior and not overlook what has happened. It's a voluntary program. They can take the charge in lieu of not participating in the program. But if they come into this program, they're going to work the program.
Now, there are some crimes that are not eligible for this program, and lawmakers also heard from another program called Jacob's Ladder operating in Prince George's County, talking about the various types of crimes that they're seeing their participants participate in, and the lawmakers really got a clear sense of the rise in certain offenses that this program specifically is seeing.
What are some of the crimes that you've seen in Prince George's County and really throughout the state of Maryland that you are seeing our youth get into that are coming through your program?
Yes, handguns, gun offenses, carjackings, robberies, the assaults with guns, shootings. Those are the most prevalent. Cars, vehicles, always the hot topic right now. But that's the range that we're seeing.
And have you seen an increase over the last few years in that?
Absolutely, yes.
So again, this was the third hearing from this House committee talking about juvenile crime. And just moments ago, I actually questioned the chair of this committee, Delegate Luke Clippinger, a Democrat from Baltimore City. And I questioned him, when will the public see the Democrats' ideas to address these concerns that we're hearing again and again from police, prosecutors, and parents? And he tells me that legislation is being drafted. They really wanted to get a full picture of what's going on, hence why having 3 full hearings talking about this issue. He says that he actually has not worked with the administration about this issue specifically yet. Coming up at 6, you'll hear from him directly, as well as other members, specifically Republicans, who are raising some serious questions about the path forward when lawmakers return during the General Assembly in January. We're live in Annapolis. Mackenzie Frost, Fox 45 News.
Thank you for the update. Well, Fox 45 News has seen countless brazen crimes committed by juveniles all across our state. Tonight, we're taking a closer look at the timeline of violence as state government waits to act. On September 13th, Maryland lawmakers hold their first hearing surrounding the juvenile crime crisis. It focused on 2 specific laws, the Juvenile Justice Reform Act and the Juvenile Interrogation Protection Act. Prosecutors and law enforcement saying these laws keep them from holding young offenders accountable.
Come in, we can't detain them, they're back in the community the next day.
After 5 hours of questioning, lawmakers ultimately agreed to continue the conversation at a later date. On the same day as that hearing, police in Baltimore City arrest a 3rd teenage suspect in connection to the Brooklyn Day mass shooting, the city's largest mass shooting, which killed 2 young people and injured 28 others. The mother of one of those victims pleading with city leaders to hold young offenders accountable.
What's your normal? I challenge you, what is your normal?
Let them take each other out. Is that your normal?
Just 3 days later, September 16th, 4 juveniles are shot in a 2-hour time span ranging in age from 14 to 17 years old. On October 20th, a string of early morning carjackings and armed robberies are reported across Canton and Federal Hill. One of those attacks caught on a Ring camera. Blood-curdling screams waking up neighbors who say a dog walker was punched in the face by a group of young people before running off. A week later, October 27th, 3 teens are injured in a shooting right outside Carver Vocational High School. 2 15-year-olds and 2 parents are now facing charges. On November 2nd, a woman is attacked by a 12 and 14-year-old in Butchers Hill. Those juveniles were arrested but released to their parents just 2 hours later.
The law, I'm pissed off at the law.
Fox 45 News later learning the 12-year-old in that attack is connected to a string of car thefts over the summer in Baltimore County. On November 6th, Baltimore Mayor Brandon Scott and BPD Commissioner Richard Worley sound the alarm on juvenile car thefts. The city reporting more than 9,300 cars stolen at the time, and youth car thefts up more than 166%. On November 8th, lawmakers again holding a hearing. State representatives grilling local police and members of the state's juvenile services effort to find out where programs are failing and what laws need to change. The biggest concerns, a lack of accountability and the high number of repeat offenders. In the meantime, kids keep breaking the law. On November 25th, police telling Fox 45 News 15 juveniles were arrested over a week's time for a string of crime, including armed robberies and car thefts. And on November 29th, a Baltimore County woman living just outside the city is attacked as she walks from her car to her home.
I was parked right over there.
The 72-year-old says she was approached by 2 boys who hit her with a gun and stole her car.
These kids don't have consequences, and that's what makes me very angry. And I am furious, and I'm going after these. I want to prosecute. I want to see some type of retribution.
That brings us to today. Just a month from the January legislative session, state lawmakers now meeting for a 3rd time. And new tonight, police are investigating the shooting of a 17-year-old in Baltimore County. The incident happened yesterday morning on Bonnie Ridge Drive, right off the Jones Falls Expressway. According to police, the teen was home alone when 2 suspects broke into the home and shot him. He is expected to be okay. Police are now investigating, saying it appears to be a targeted attack.
One of those crimes was the triple shooting outside of Carver Vocational High School, or Carver Votech, as people know it. Today, Baltimore City State's Attorney Ivan Bates announced the parents of one of the teen suspects will be charged. Alexa Ashwell continues our live team coverage with details of the charges. Alexa?
Yes, Kai. So collectively, this father, mother, and their son is facing a total of at least 36 criminal counts from this assault turned shooting outside Carver Vocational School back in October. The 15-year-old, we're told, is being charged as an adult with attempted murder.
A family facing charges.
We need parents to be parents. I'm going to say it again. Now, more than ever, in Baltimore, we need parents to be parents. These 2 parents fell woefully short of their responsibility that day.
Baltimore City State's Attorney Ivan Bates announcing indictments against a father identified as William Dredden, a mother identified as Tiffany Harrison, and their 15-year-old son in the assault turned shooting outside Carver Vocational School back on October 27th. The incident, Bates says, caught on video.
To see parents in a video participating in these types of acts to children is absolutely mind-boggling.
And criminal. According to charging documents, the father and mother went to the school with their 15-year-old son and not only stood by as he pistol whipped another teen, but helped their son with the assault.
A child's guardian facilitate in settling a schoolyard dispute with violence.
The beating then escalating, Bates says, when the son began exchanging gunfire with another teen. Both were shot, as well as a 3rd teen.
Shots fired alert 2205 Pressman Street, 2205 Pressman Street in the western, 8 rounds.
16-year-old shot twice, right torso, and a 15-year-old has one in the right leg.
Holding parents accountable, Bates says, is part of his office's approach in addressing the juvenile crime crisis.
Hear me clear, parents. If you have a child, you must also be responsible for your children's actions. We are laser focused on holding these parents accountable. If you wish to participate in these types of illegal activities with your children, if you're not going to be a parent to your children, then we will hold you accountable as well. And our accountability for us means jail, not local jail. We're looking for prison.
Now, there are questions that remain, including any charges for the other teen who was involved. We asked the city state's attorney about this. Bates would only say that all those involved in the criminal act are being held accountable. Kai Mary, as for the parents, I checked the court records. Both are listed as being held without bond, with court dates scheduled for early next year. Alexa Ashwell, Fox 45 News.
All right, Alexa, thank you. Well, the Baltimore County Council president is pushing a bill that would strip the county inspector general's powers. If passed, the policies would limit the Watchdog's funding, operation, and ability to publicly publish reports. Fox 45 is now pressing the county executive for answers on the push to limit the inspector general's powers. Rebecca Pryor has details on the plan and what comes next. Rebecca?
Well, Guy, not only would these changes strip the inspector general of their powers, but Council Chair Julian Jones tried to push them through at the last possible minute. Ultimately, though, so the rest of county council, they refused. They decided to delay the vote for 2 weeks as a way to give the public time to weigh in on these changes. Some of those changes, they include the creation of an advisory board. It would be made of 7 members. Most of them would be county officials. It would also require the inspector general to submit reports to that board for approval before they can be released to the public. The amendments would also cut back on the IG subpoena powers, making it so that the inspector general would have to ask for documents that they need first. Then they would wait 90 days for a response before they can issue a subpoena themselves. Inspector General Kelly Madigan is calling the proposed changes outrageous, arguing that they would compromise the integrity of her office. The changes also go against the recommendations of the Blue Ribbon Commission, who spent 10 months and 100,000 taxpayer dollars forming appropriate guidelines for the inspector general's office. Today on Fox 45's morning show, County Executive Johnny Olszewski siding with Madigan, saying that he was also blindsided during last night's meeting.
I completely understand the inspector general's shock and surprise and outrage in this situation. Neither she nor this administration were made aware of these amendments. They were last second. We stand by our belief that the legislation that we put forward originally, that we thought was going to be adopted last night, is the right path forward for this office and for Baltimore County.
I reached out to Jones's office today for a comment, but as of news time tonight, have not heard back. Reporting live in Baltimore, Rebecca Pryor, Fox 45 News.
Well, coming up after the break, City State's Attorney Ivan Bates joins us live in studio. The push now to hold parents accountable.
Presidents of several top U.S. universities face Congress as they defend their response to student protests on the Israeli-Hamas war. The latest details coming from Capitol Hill.
And I'm White Everett. It's been a pretty quiet Tuesday of weather around here, but colder air is on the march, as well as our next weather maker. Look at this Clipper system diving in. The million-dollar question, how much of this holds together for the overnight around Baltimore? We'll answer that coming up.
Baltimore City State's Attorney Ivan Bates announcing the indictments against a juvenile and both his parents for the triple shooting outside of Carver-Votech High School in October.
Tiffany Harrison and William Dredden face first and second degree assault charges, as well as various gun charges.
Baltimore City State's Attorney Ivan Bates joins us now live in studio tonight. Thank you so much for coming in to talk to us.
Thank you very much for having me.
So what was the reasoning for your decision to charge these parents in this case?
Well, it was simple. One, they were allegedly, keep in mind, everyone is innocent until proven guilty. Allegedly, they were there. That's what the video, we would say, says. They participated in that act. Because of that participation, then they also would be held responsible. It's only right as my job as a state's attorney to hold individuals accountable. But also, we've sat and talked about so much is going on with the juveniles. To have parents allegedly involved in this type of behavior it's just mind-blowing. We have to hold the parents accountable if we're going to hold the children accountable.
So, Mr. Bates, these parents are facing charges in part because they were at the scene, but could you foresee charging parents who might not be there when their child is accused of committing a crime, but they know what their child is up to?
Well, it depends if they were part of the conspiracy. Now, parents have to understand that sometimes knowing what's going on, being an active participant in the planning or preparation of a crime, if we are able to prove that conspiracy, then yes, that parent would be charged as well. We will hold the parents accountable if we're able to prove it.
We know the next legislative session is right around the corner. You've been vocal about the juvenile justice laws impeding your ability to do your job. Are you going to go to Annapolis, walk the halls, and try to make sure that they change some of these laws?
Yes, we will go down to Annapolis. We will walk the halls. One of the things we've used the opportunity to do is to sit down and have dialogue and conversation with a number of the lawmakers to truly explain how parts of the law have tied our hands as prosecutors. We're not asking for a major overhaul. We're asking for certain tweaks. For instance, when you have a case with viewing a handgun, illegal transport of a handgun, possession of a handgun is a misdemeanor, or a vehicle car case, that comes in. Those cases don't come to the prosecutor, to us. They go to DJS first. DJS has 25 days to decide what to do with that case. Sometime it may take longer. So by the time we as prosecutors get that case, we're now 30, 40, 60 days before we reach out to the victim for the first time. It makes prosecuting cases very difficult, makes reaching out to victims very difficult, and it makes giving certain consequences swift consequences to juveniles impossible.
And Mr. Bates, quickly before you go, Senator Will Smith of Montgomery County, you heard him say he doesn't really foresee wholesale changes to this. Do you think you can get in his ear, sit down with him, have a conversation, and get something changed?
I do. I believe there's a difference between wholesale and tweaks. We're talking about tweaks to the law to still allow us the tools to do our jobs properly.
All right. City State's Attorney Ivan Bates will be watching. Thanks for coming in tonight. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, pretty quiet day of weather here in Baltimore, but things set to change somewhat as we go into the overnight hours. Nice shot, M&T Bank Stadium with the Christmas lighting up. Air temperatures from the state capitol, 45 degrees, up into the city, 48 now. Most spots were close to 50 today without quite getting there. And there's our Clipper system coming in out of the west. See widespread rain showers basically from Pittsburgh south. And then as you get into the high terrain, out toward Cumberland and into the West Virginia area, that's where we have the snow showers coming down. And that's going to be basically the story. As this comes through overnight, air temperatures dropping. The chance for at least a few flakes to fly along the 95 corridor is going to be there overnight into the very early morning hours. But a lot of this moisture being lifted over the high terrain to the west, kind of wringing out the moisture of the system, too. So not that much moisture survives to create precipitation around Baltimore, we think, overnight. Low 40s right now. 42 Cockeysville, 41 in Bel Air, chilly, and set to get colder overnight, very close to freezing, which again is right as at least the remnants of that Clipper system come into the 95 corridor. That's why we keep in that chance for some mixed showers past midnight to about, let's say, around 4 in the morning, and a few flurries could fly even beyond that into the morning commute. Don't be surprised if a couple of flakes fly out there. Won't be our first recorded snow of the season, though. That happened last week when we got a trace at BWI. So after those overnight wintry showers, it's just a colder and brisk midweek behind that system. That system dragging in colder air from the Northland, and then a milder trend sets up once again into the weekend. So there it is, the system again sweeping in, but also diminishing as it arrives. Still cloud cover and a few showers around, and then back west of that system, drier and colder air punching in and brightening the skies around here for Wednesday afternoon right into Thursday, looking like a cold scenario, but a clear scenario. Once the system again comes through and basically diminishes out to sea, it's going to be all that colder air in behind that's now positioned out in the upper Midwest. It's going to be drugged down behind that low pressure, or at least briefly, for a couple of days here. So coldest days of the week, Wednesday, Thursday, only in the 40s, nighttime lows below freezing. And then we'll see the warmer air begin to push in Friday into Saturday. It's a mild setup for the weekend, truly, for this time of year. It does look like rain possible, though, for that second half of the weekend and for the Ravens game out there at M&T Bank Stadium. Be ready for a wet one.
Wyatt, thanks. LSU basketball star Angel Reese, and Maryland native, returns to the court after a controversial 4-game suspension. The pressures, one expert says, are facing young athletes like Reese. And the Baltimore County Council president pushing a bill that would strip power from the county's inspector general. A look at the back and forth as the county executive weighs in.
Thought it was a sonic boom at first.
Well, take a look at this. Video shows a home exploding Monday night in Arlington, Virginia. According to police, they were at the home to execute a search warrant because the suspect had fired a flare gun 30 to 40 times into the street. Neighbors say the powerful explosion happened after an hours-long standoff with police. Tonight, the suspect, 56-year-old James Yu, is presumed to be dead.
Human remains have been located at the scene, and the Office of the Chief Medical Examiner will work to positively identify the individual and determine the cause and manner of death.
It's incredibly shocking. It had to be a deliberate act and a desperate person, and I hope it has no broader connections to terrorism or something.
At least one other home was destroyed by the blast. The cause of the explosion is under investigation. Fox 45 News following some breaking news right now. A fire right near Camden Yards downtown. We have reached out to authorities for more information, but we have not heard back. You can follow along for any updates both on air and online, but you can see a bit of black smoke there in this video from just someone driving a fire near Camden Yards. We'll have more coming up tonight on the news at 6. More Democrats are joining Republicans to call for changes to the Biden administration's border policies. After the break, Maryland's only Republican representative in Congress joins us live to weigh in.
The leaders of some of America's top universities face tough questions on Capitol Hill over rising anti-Semitism. I'm Kayla Gaskins with their answers straight ahead.
Fox 45 News is following the crisis at the southern border. Certain entry checkpoints are temporarily closed due to a huge increase in migrant activity. Border agents say they can't keep up with the growing demand.
The surge comes as more Democrats join Republicans calling for change to the current border policies under President Biden.
Maryland Congressman Andy Harris is joining us live to weigh in. Congressman Harris, thank you for joining us tonight.
Good to be with you.
What do you think President Biden and the White House can do to address this issue between the border of the U.S. and Mexico?
Well, the first thing to do is just start obeying the law. The laws are pretty clear. They're not supposed to be admitting people into the interior of the United States without an adjudication on an asylum claim. But we have to hold their feet to the fire. They're obviously not willing to do it, so we're going to have to probably tie it to some other funding, like the Ukraine funding, in order to get that border finally secured.
How could the surge, do you think, and the current policies impact the upcoming presidential election?
Well, we know that President Trump got elected in 2016 on the border, and the border is actually in much worse condition now than it was in 2016. I think it's going to be an election campaign issue. That's why I think that the Democrats and hopefully President Biden in the end come along and agree with us that we have to secure our southern border. We can't go along with literally millions of people a year illegally crossing our border and staying in the United States.
Yeah, Congressman, we want to shift gears here for a moment to the expulsion of Congressman George Santos from the House of Representatives, something you were not necessarily in support of. What's your reaction to the expulsion? And let me ask you, quite frankly, what's the difference from possibly expelling Senator Menendez out of New Jersey, who's also facing federal charges?
Well, I think you're exactly right. The fact of the matter is that Senator Menendez is also facing charges. He's also been indicted. The fact he's not been convicted, but actually, his crime is taking a bribe from a public official. I mean, Mr. Santos's most of the allegations are, campaign finance violations, and whether or not he told the truth to his constituents. The fact of the matter is he is the duly elected congressman by 750,000 people in New York who now don't have a representative for 2 or 3 months while he has a replacement. The bar has always been, since the Civil War, conviction of a crime in order to be expelled from Congress. It was a mistake to do it. We should have censured him, but not expelled him.
That's what I was going to say. Last week, Santos told CNN that the House, quote, just set new dangerous precedents. You would agree with that then?
I absolutely would agree with that. In America, an indictment is not the same as a conviction. If you think about it, the jury pool that's going to hear his case later, it could be introduced in front of that jury pool, and that jury pool will realize that the Congress apparently has already tried and convicted him in their minds. That's not going to be a fair trial for him later. That's why conviction always made sense as the bar for expulsion.
Interesting. All right. Congressman Andy Harris of Maryland, thank you so much for joining us, sir. We'll talk with you again soon.
Thank you.
Israel's military is calling for more evacuations in southern Gaza as it expands its ground offensive.
But top UN officials do warn Palestinians are running out of safe places to go. The Israel Defense Forces are bombarding an area around what's known as Khan Yunis, vowing to wipe out Hamas. Humanitarian leaders say the assault will worsen the humanitarian crisis in Gaza as evacuations push Palestinians into increasingly smaller portions of the enclave. According to the United Nations, more than 80% of Gaza's 2.3 million residents have been displaced.
Here in Baltimore, the city council fails to get enough votes to pass a resolution condemning the Hamas terrorist attack against Israel.
It's a simple resolution. It's A or B. And I think what it is you have some political leaders that are afraid to take a side. So they want to have it both ways, where they can say in the end they didn't vote for it, they didn't vote against it.
And we have team coverage tonight on a local and national level.
Let's begin with Fox 45's Amy Simpson. She's following the Baltimore City Council's controversial decision as the 4 council members who abstained from last night's vote are now sharing their side of the story. Amy?
Yes, Mary Kai, 4 members of City Council now standing by their decision to sit out of that vote last night, now saying in part they feel this measure was rushed through without discussion.
An eventful night inside council chambers Monday.
City Council, you have blood on your hands!
Demonstrators interrupting the agenda.
Free Palestine!
Their cause emblazoned on hands, vocal in their message. This as a resolution to condemn the Hamas terrorist attacks on Israel and stand in solidarity with the local and worldwide Jewish population, failed to receive the required 12 votes for approval.
The resolution fails for immediate adoption.
That symbolic measure introduced by Councilman Isaac Yitzi Schleifer.
With the large Jewish population that we have here in Baltimore that is feeling very isolated and alone because of the recent events and the rise in anti-Semitism in the United States, it's important that their government can stand with them.
9 votes in favor of the resolution wasn't enough. 2 members of council, Robert Stokes and James Torrance, were not present, and 4 other council members, Christopher Burnett, Ryan Dorsey, Felicia Porter, and Odette Ramos, abstained from voting on the resolution altogether.
To me, abstaining is the wimpy way out.
Political analyst John Deedy.
And the thing is, you could be pro-Palestinian and anti-Hamas, just as you can be pro-Israel and opposing Benjamin Netanyahu.
On why someone might choose to sit out.
It's a simple resolution. It's A or B. And I think what it is you have some political leaders that are afraid to take a side. So they want to have it both ways, where they can say in the end they didn't vote for it, they didn't vote against it.
Resolutions like this have been considered before.
I'd like to point to another resolution that this city council passed.
Schleifer pointing out just 4 years ago, a resolution was passed by council condemning a terrorist attack on 2 mosques in New Zealand, standing in solidarity with the Muslim community, condemning white nationalist hate.
My resolution, as you can see in yellow, is identical to the resolution that we passed unanimously. In fact, there's only one line that is different.
Other ceremonial resolutions passed by Baltimore City Council include a 2002 measure to oppose all forms of slavery in Mauritania, a 2016 measure to condemn statements by President-elect Donald Trump, and a 2021 measure calling for the federal government to reverse sanctions against Cuba. Today, Fox 45 sending questions to the 4 council members who abstained from the vote, asking, why did you choose to abstain from the vote last night? How do you reconcile the fact that the resolution is nearly identical to council's condemnation of the terrorist attack against Muslims in New Zealand? Do you believe Hamas is a terrorist organization? And do you support Israel's right to exist? Today, we tried to catch up with some of those who abstained at City Hall. Councilwoman Odette Ramos instead directing us to a joint statement from those 4 council members this afternoon. First and foremost, we unequivocally condemn the actions of Hamas, a designated terrorist organization. The statement says, we stand in solidarity with Palestinians and Israelis who yearn for a peaceful and prosperous future. But the council members describe the resolution as last minute and claims the measure went against council rules and procedure, concerned it didn't condemn Islamophobia and all forms of hate, not just anti-Semitism. We stand by our decision to abstain in voting for an incomplete resolution that is not inclusive of all the communities and nuances of this global conflict.
Now, if you'd like to read their full statement, it is up on foxbaltimore.com. Meanwhile, that resolution last night, while it did not specifically condemn Islamophobia, it does call to, quote, condemn hate speech and violence in every form. We're live at City Hall tonight. Amy Simpson, Fox 45 News.
Amy, thank you. And since the Israel-Hamas war broke out, there's been a rise of reported anti-Semitism on college campuses, as well as anti-Israel protests. Today, the leaders of some of America's top universities faced a grilling from lawmakers on Capitol Hill for their responses to the issues. Here's national correspondent Kayla Gaskins.
Humanitarian crisis.
The president of Harvard University admitting there's a spike in anti-Semitism on Harvard's campus.
We have seen a dramatic and deeply concerning rise in anti-Semitism. I have seen reckless and thoughtless rhetoric shared in person and online, on campus and off.
The presidents of UPenn and MIT also testifying on Capitol Hill Tuesday.
We are combating this hate on our campus with both immediate and comprehensive action.
The hearing comes as these top universities face intense backlash for rising incidents of anti-Semitism.
What action has been taken against students who are harassing and calling for the genocide of Jews on Harvard's campus?
I can assure you we have robust
What actions have been taken? I'm not asking.
Actions underway.
A UPenn senior speaking at a press conference before the hearing.
36 hours ago, I, along with most of campus, sought refuge in our rooms. As classmates and professors chanted proudly for the genocide of Jews while igniting smoke bombs and defacing school property, Penn's president did choose silence.
At MIT, Jewish students say they were physically blocked from attending class by pro-Palestinian protesters. Lawmakers demanding answers for what some see as these presidents' slow and inadequate responses. The university leaders, though, short on specifics when it came to if they're actually enforcing their own rules.
I'm happy to have my office follow up.
Regardless, polling shows nearly half of all Jewish American college students say they feel physically unsafe on campus.
You're a dirty little Jew. You deserve to die. Are words said not by Hamas, but by my classmates and professors.
Both Harvard and UPenn are currently being investigated by the Department of Education over allegations they created a hostile environment for Jewish students. In Washington, I'm Kayla Gaskins.
We are following breaking news right now out of West Baltimore. We're going to take a live look at the scene of what police are calling a barricade situation right there on your right. This is along North Carrollton Avenue. The street is closed off. Police are telling everybody to avoid this area. Police not giving many details about what's going on, including what led up to the barricade situation. Fox 45 News will continue to follow the developing story and keep you updated on our website and, of course, right here on air. Newly released state data shows fewer Maryland schools are achieving at the highest levels.
The State Department of Education released a report card for the 2022-23 school year that it's calling the new baseline. Data shows just 85 schools earned a 5-star rating, which is the highest possible score. More than 200 schools earned 5 stars during the 2021-2022 school year. The Department of Education says this decline could be for a variety of reasons, including a return to the pre-pandemic rating process used to measure the success of schools. On this card, the state used chronic absenteeism, which has been elevated since the pandemic as one of its criteria. In the past, chronic absenteeism was not counted, but Interim Superintendent Dr. Carrie Wright stopped short of saying this is the reason for the state's decline.
We don't know that that's a true statement for all schools. We do know that is a factor in some schools. But in other schools, what were the components that they lost points on? Because everybody has their own score sheet.
Tonight at 10 o'clock, Project Baltimore takes you through all of the data released today and when you'll be able to see exactly how your child's school did. Coming up, Pennsylvania Senator John Fetterman commissions some unlikely help to troll his indicted colleague, Bob Menendez, the recently expelled congressman who gave the New Jersey senator some advice.
Hey, meteorologist Wyatt Everett here. A pretty quiet weather day around Baltimore. Temperatures into the upper 40s, even with just a little bit of sun trying to peek through. However, our next weather maker on the march, and the big question, how much of this mixed precipitation might make it into I-95 later tonight? We'll detail that coming up.